All right, we are approaching the 5th anniversary of the inaugural BKFC event, and that went down in June of 2018. And very excited to be talking to one of the individuals who competed on that event, and always good getting to talk to this individual. I've got Tony Lopez with me, and just kind of wondering how your day is going so far, man.
Oh, it's going good just like every other day, you know. We're working and doing what I got to do to put food on the table.
Yeah, no doubt. That's what it's all about for sure. And I'm kind of curious because, I mean, obviously you were, someone who's had a tremendous amount of MMA fights before the initial BKFC event happened. Like, what were your first thoughts when, like, a bare-knuckle boxing offer came your way? Because obviously the scene in mid-2018 wasn't, what it is today.
Oh, no, you know what? When I first heard about it, I was like, you know what? This is something I can get into. You know, to me, I'm always like with MMA. I figured that, you know what? This is like a street fight. You know, you go on the ground, standing, whatever. You know, you just gotta be ready. So when Bare-Knuckle came about, I saw that as you know what? It is even more like the street because there's no gloves. You know, you get hit and you feel it, and you know, how's that going to be? So I loved it when I heard it coming out,
Yeah, and kind of interesting, too, because, like, I mean, there were certain, like, European leagues, like BKB, that were putting on shows like that, but at least in America, it had been about a century since they had a bare-knuckle boxing event, so was that kind of a cool, part of it initially, like, sort of being part of history, or did it just seem like an exciting kind of martial art more so?
Well, no, you know what? I mean, that was a big thing too. You know, the first one, like you said, over 100 years to be held here, and it's like it's always great to be in the beginning where something starts. And because if it takes off, hey, you're part of that, the start of it, and so it was for me. I mean, I felt privileged to be able to be on the first one ever to here in the United States, and make a good show out of it.
Yeah, and what was the awareness of, like, bare-knuckle boxing prior to that? Like, did it strike you as, like, almost like a surprise sort of thing? Like, oh, cool, this is starting to kind of pop up domestically. Like, what did you know about the bare-knuckle scene prior to, that bout offer, like, in summer of 2018?
You know what? I didn't know much about it. I mean, only up until they hit me up, if I wanted to compete in it, is when I said, yeah, sure. And then, I started Googling it to see what it was. And then when I saw it, I was like, hey, you know what? This is something I can get into. So, yeah, I definitely, like I said, I had no clue. I mean, I heard boxing. Okay, so there's boxing in it. But what else can you do, So, it's pretty much just like boxing. The only thing that I see the difference is you can, hook the head. And deliver some nice, beautiful shots, uppercuts and stuff like that. But, it's just, you got to be on your A game if you want to survive.
And I'm curious, like, I feel like I almost know the answer to this just based on how many fights you've had and whatnot, but just because it's like a new combat sport, did it feel altogether different, like, coming to the arena on fight day, like the general vibe backstage with, like, warm-ups and things like that? Like, did it feel a great deal different? Like, maybe something new is happening, or was it kind of business as usual?
Well, for me, it was business as usual, because I don't warm up before a fight. I don't, do anything different than any fight, because I fought in MMA, I fought in kickboxing, boxing, it's just about any kind of contact sport, really, I've been in it. So this being a new one, I was just like, okay, cool, let's see what we got. I watched a few fights before mine to see, what to expect and stuff, and I was like, okay, you know what? It's just boxing without gloves, so let's make it good. So, it was the same old for me.
Yeah, and I mean, the fight that you ended up having there, just an incredible, performance there, getting the, fight with Joey Beltran off and everything like that. And I think that was, such a great fight. I mean, I felt like that was the first like widely kind of shared like bare knuckle fight and everything like that. Even after like a few events had transpired, like what are your, I guess, main memories of that fight when I'm talking about it? Like what are the main, I guess, takeaways from that first Beltran fight?
Well, I mean, for me, it's usually 90% of the time it's about the show. And, if I can get the fans to get into the fight and, start cheering, whether they're booing me or cheering me, as long as they're saying, I'm almost done. But, for me, like I said, it was just, as long as the fans get into it, it makes me feel like, cool, like, hey, this is what they want to see. So, like together, the more blood you put out there, the more the people get into it, and the more the cheers and the excitement is. That's what it was. It was a great fight.
Yeah, and I was talking to Joey Beltran the other day, and he was kind of talking about just, what that fight meant to his own career as well. But we were both kind of talking about how it was such like an influential fight, because I remember, people talking about just really the bare knuckle scene in general back then, and kind of wondering like, is this a one-off kind of show? Is this gonna, turn into anything consistent and keep growing? And I feel like that fight was like a big, catalyst for the whole thing, just how classic it was. And I kind of compared it to like the Bonner Griffin sort of fight, just in as far as like really setting things off. Like, have you heard people kind of talk to you about that fight? And I guess, what does that fight mean to, I guess, maybe your career as well as like what it's done for bare knuckle?
Oh, yeah, that's a fight that, everybody remembers, because, it's the first one, and it was an exciting fight, and, everybody got into it. And I think that helps set the standard for what you're supposed to do when you get in that ring, what the fans expect to see, and, how you should perform. And, there's been so many fights after that have emulated that, where, you see a bloody, gory, and they're just going at it like, two animals to see which one is the last one standing. But, it's awesome, the feeling of that fight, and then just watching everybody and watching the sport expand, the organization grow, and that's my first thing, like you said, I was thinking that it should be a one and done, but let's see how it goes, and now it's been going the right way.
Yeah, and it seemed like, Cheyenne, Wyoming became like such a go-to regular spot for, bare knuckle, especially early on. Like, it felt like Wyoming was one of the big states to initially put on a lot of the bare knuckle events. So yeah, cool that that's kind of tied into it as well. Like, I felt like Wyoming played a big part too, and bare knuckle kind of making that comeback in America.
Yeah, no, definitely. Every little thing plays a part. When you don't really think about it, but then when you look back, you see how everything added up and just propelled it, and got it going the way it did. So you can't. It's a great feeling to be able to see it and just have been part of it too. At the beginning, and just still, active in it, and it's great.
Yeah, and I'm curious, like, what other fights from that night you might like recall in a certain sense. Like, I know some fighters are very locked into, just what they're doing more so, and that's kind of the whole thing. But I'm just wondering, because the card has so many names that went on to do such great things in the sport. Like, Arnold Adams fought on that card, like Reggie Barnett Jr., Johnny Bedford, Bobby Gunn. Like, I could really keep going on. Were there any other fights from that first BKFC event that you recall from that night?
The only one that keeps on in my head is, I think it was Sam Shoemaker and Eric Prindle. And I just, the one shot, Eric Prindle's a big guy, and, Sam Shoemaker, he's a big guy, but not as big as Eric. And, when he just hit him with that one shot, he just dropped him. To me, that's one of the fights I saw just, prior before I went out, and that's why that one stuck out in my head. But that night, I remember the main event too. Rico. No. Oh God, I'm trying to play right on the names, but I remember, even before the fight, hanging out with some of the fighters, stuff like that, and just talking about it. And hey, what do you do? What's your game plan? What do you think? And stuff like that. So it was just, the fights themselves. I didn't get to see all of them. I think I said that one is before I came out, just because I was, prepped and ready to walk out. But yeah, just from what I heard, they were just banging about, quick knockouts, stuff like that. And just it was just, like I said, it was a little nerve-wracking, just thinking like, what's it going to be like? But yeah, no, like I said, it was a great night.
And something that I also thought was cool talking to Joey, like he was sort of mentioning like how this fight that you guys had was initially like outside of that like tournament kind of field, like they had a heavyweight bracket they were doing on that first event there and everything like that. And like, at least for Joey, he felt like the performance that he did like really changed kind of how the promotion was maybe perceiving him or how they were looking to kind of use him. Like, what do you feel like you got out of that performance there? And I guess, does the context of it being that reserve bout kind of make it extra sweet? Because I feel like that's the most talked about fight from that event.
Well, I think, like, for me, it just gave more to the kind of fighter I am, in the sense where it's like people know that I can take shots and I can, no matter how much you hit me, I keep coming. And that added more to that, since there was no gloves. It's like, look, man, that's Bare-Knuckle, man. He took those shots and, he kept coming, and for both of us, we were just going back and forth at each other. So, I think it just elevated our game in that sense where, like, damn, hey, these guys are our fighters, They go in there to kill each other and just, come out with the win. So, that's what I saw out of our fight.
And I guess just something I'm interested in too, like, what was that feeling when, you landed that first bare-knuckle punch? Did it differ at all from, like, how it feels in your MMA fights, or was it kind of a unique feeling?
Well, to me, it felt the same. I know you got hit. But other than that, they're just hits. I'm like, okay. You I didn't really feel when you get cut. To me, I didn't feel no cuts. I just started feeling blood. I was like, why am I bleeding? Oh, hell no, this sucks. But yeah, the shots are the shots. When you get hit, it hurts. sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, so to me, there wasn't much of a difference.
And was it similar for like how you were feeling in like the, I guess, days after the fight? Was it maybe like a similar level of being, I guess, a bit banged up that you might have from an MMA fight, or was there like maybe a unique level of damage to the hands or something like that?
Yeah, what? It was better, except for the hands. They were sore, just because they're not used to hitting without some gloves and something on there. So yeah, the heads were a little more swollen than normal, but it was just normal.
Yeah, and I guess just one of the last questions I have, I guess I'm curious your thoughts on just, where the bare-knuckle scene is at nowadays, 5 years later, as compared to, where things were at in June 2018.
Oh, you know what? I just see it just like the UFC. When the UFC first started out, they were only allowed in so many states, and, they only had a limited audience. And look where they're at now. I see Bare-Knuckle doing the same thing, just climbing and exploding.
Yeah, I definitely agree, man. And it's always good getting to talk to you, but I do want to be mindful of your schedule as well. So is there maybe anything you might want to add as like a parting kind of thought as we're wrapping up here, Tony? Like maybe an anecdote from that first BKFC event we didn't mention yet, or anything of that nature, maybe?
No, you know what? Hey, man, for the fans out there, even for the ones that aren't fans, if you watch a BKFC fight or a bare-knuckle fight, you're going to get into it. It's totally different. It's a different feeling. It's a different look at two guys going at it. You know, so just hey, people out there, hey, get ready because this is it's a new sport and it's going to take off. And you know, like I said, just get there and start enjoying and going with the fighters that are in there now.
Yeah, well said, and just very cool from my perspectives to have seen that first event in June 2018 and see where things are at now, and great getting to, you know, talk to you as someone who was on that card. And yeah, thanks so much for the time, and I appreciate the insights, man. You have a good rest of your day, and yeah, thanks for the talk.
Well, thank you, John, and you too.